Nick Saban, Alabama head coach, got Duke coming up this weekend, joining us en route to work. Good morning, Coach. Thanks for joining us. When was the last time somebody parked in your parking spot?
I can't remember.
What would happen if somebody parked in your parking spot?
Nothing. I'd just find another place to park, or I mean, just I don't know that it would do any good, but it just is what it is.
What if Tua parked in your parking spot?
I'd probably have a discussion with them. Sometimes when key players on your team, do things, even though you really have a great relationship with them and it's kind of not a big deal, you also have to realize that, especially when the key players do something, everybody else on the team is watching. Yeah. So how you manage, that circumstance, regardless of what it is really important to how they decide to do things in the future.
You more patient or less patient?
Oh, I think I'm much more patient. I've been praying for patience for the last 40 years, and I think someone answered my prayers here in the last maybe 10, 12 years. That is, I think it made me a little better, in terms of seeing things from 1,000 feet rather than just, kind of being anxious about getting it done right this minute. And sometimes it doesn't get done the right way when you jump into things that way without a good plan.
What's the best piece of coaching advice your wife ever gave you?
Really probably way back when I was at Michigan State, I was always sort of from the beginning of time when I became a head coach, the media always made me out to be sort of the Till of the Hun, type of image. And I was always really, really upset by that. And because I didn't think it was correct. So I said that to my wife once, and she said, well, did you ever watch yourself in an interview? You're very anxious. You're, not very, cordial to the people. You look nervous. You look like you're afraid you're going to say the wrong thing. It looks like you resent, the questions that they're asking you. So, why wouldn't they paint a picture of you that's maybe not who you are? And I said, okay. And she said, sometimes the perception you have is yourself, and the perception that everybody else has is your blind spot, and yours is about as big as the Grand Canyon. So that's probably about the best advice she ever gave me, because I noticed that about myself and tried to change.
But is it your job to look like you're having fun or sound like you're having fun?
I don't know. It depends on what kind of fun you want to have. If you want to have fun now and sort of joke around and not be too serious about focusing on getting it right and doing things right, and you can laugh and joke and practice and not be serious and not emphasize things like discipline, execution, attention to detail. And then you won't have any fun at the end of the year, because the team won't really develop the necessary habits that it takes to be successful. So it depends on what your definition of fun is. If it's joking around and messing around and, throwing spitballs and meetings like we did in the first grade to have fun, then, you're probably not going to have much fun at the end.
John Wooden talked about this in the latter part of his career, where the expectation level was so high. It was everybody expected him to win a championship, a national championship at UCLA. And it's the same with you at Alabama. Is that fair for us to expect Alabama to be playing for a national championship?
Well, I guess there's two ways to look at that. Now, I really feel fortunate to have the opportunity to be someplace as a coach where they have high expectations and standards for what they expect to accomplish and what they expect to do. So, that's the good news. I think the most important thing about that is you really can't focus on outcomes. When you're in a situation like this, you really have to stay focused on what do I have to do every day to get the outcome that I want. And that's very challenging because we live in an outcome-oriented world. But to get the outcome that you want, you have to focus day in and day out. What's happening right now? How can I get it better? What do I need to do to improve? You can focus on the score, but most of the time, when you focus on the score and not the shot, you don't hit the shot very well. So that's kind of what we try to do here. And I'm glad that they have high expectations. I don't think sometimes it's realistic, but at the same time, we understand that we want to get everybody on our team to play the best. And if we have good enough players and we're fortunate enough to keep the right players healthy, we'll have a chance in the end to do something special.
Yeah, I mean, it's a compliment that people think you're going to be playing for a national championship every year. I'm curious, what do you think is the first thing that goes on a coach? Like when coaches decide that they're not going to do it anymore, like what's the one thing that leaves you?
I can't answer that because it hadn't happened to me yet.
But is it passion?
Not my hip left me, but that didn't affect my. That was actually a motivation to keep doing it because I didn't like sitting at home for the day I sat at home. But I would say probably so. Passion is probably a key word to be successful at anything. And if you don't have that, especially in sports, I think it'll start to show in your work, and it'll probably show in the attitude of the people who are working with you. So that would probably be a good answer to that question.
He said Nick Saban, the Alabama head coach. He's got Duke coming up on Saturday. What if you found out that the surgeon who was working on your hip in the offseason was an Auburn grad?
As long as he was a good surgeon. There's some things about people and there's some things about school loyalties, and I try to keep those two things separate.
Do you have any clothes that have like Clemson orange or Auburn colors and like any other colors in there? If I go into your closet, is it just all red, crimson?
No, absolutely not. I have all different kinds of colors, but when I choose to wear a certain color tie or sports coat or whatever, there's an occasional person that'll remind me that that's an Auburn or that's Tennessee orange or whatever. So
when you got the news about Dylan Moses, how do you handle something like that when you lose a great player?
Well, it's really disappointing. It's disappointing, first of all, for the player. It's going to be a character check for him to have to go what he has to go through to come back, to miss the season. He's a leader on the team. I think that being a signal caller on defense is, sometimes very similar to being the quarterback. So has a significant impact on, a lot of the other players on the team. So it becomes a character check for them to be supportive, to help the guys that are taking their place, to have the knowledge, help them get the knowledge and experience so that they can go out and perform well. And even though they don't have the experience, we can certainly support them and help them as they get the experience to develop. And I think, that's, basically how we have to handle it as a team. And I don't think you replace guys like that because they have so much knowledge and experience, and they're very, very good players. And their leadership is important to everybody else. But you do have to support the next guy every way that you can. And everybody on the team has got to, sort of take it as a character check and a challenge to do their best, to do their part, maybe even better than before, so that we can still be successful.
What did you make of Urban Meyer saying Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback he's seen?
I First of all, I didn't even know that was said. I don't pay a lot of attention to what people say, and I'm sure that there's a lot of people that have opinions about who the best is or make comparisons, but I don't really do that. We have a really, really good quarterback here, and they have a really, really good quarterback, there who, we recruited to come here and thought was the best quarterback that's come out of, high school, one of the best. And so I think they're both really, really good players. I don't feel it's necessary for me to make a comparison between the two.
Best quarterback you ever saw was who? College.
Well, this goes back, but I guess the best is kind of always who is the guy that made the greatest impact, and sometimes that happens early in your career. So when I was just starting out in coaching, maybe I was 27, 28 years old, secondary coach at Ohio State. We played against Stanford. John Elway was a quarterback, and he was the first great quarterback maybe that we played against, and so I think I always remember that one the most. And I'm not saying that he was the best ever. I'm just saying that because he was the first, that's the impression that sort of is embedded in my mind, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I got in the NFL and had to play against him some more, but there was Marino and Brady and a lot of other guys that were really, really good players. Joe Montana, and being on the defensive side of the ball, when you play against those guys, you can get really frustrated calling the game because you always feel like you're one play behind because they always seem to figure it out pretty quick and take advantage of whatever you're doing.
Coach, always great to catch up with you. Hope the hip is treating you well, and good luck against Duke this weekend.
All right, Dan. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. Have a good day.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV, stream for free on BR Live, or download the Dan Patrick Show app.